Thank you for that. Let me say a word about these two scriptures before I begin the sermon in a formal way. Do you notice what Christ didn't say? He didn't say, if somebody's hurt you, get your best friend and tell her what a bum he is. He didn't say, put his treatment of me on the prayer list so the whole church will know that that's the kind of person he is. He didn't say that. He didn't say, put it on Twitter or Facebook, or, I mean, let everybody know that this is a worm. This man, this girl, that's who they are. He didn't say that. What did he say? I just thought of what a priest told someone one time. They came to him and said, I've been gossiping about this person. He said, how many have you told? They said, everybody that would listen. What do I do for penance? He said, I want you to take a box of feathers and drop them out on your front steps and come back. And she did. And the wind blew them all over the neighborhood. He said, you can't pick them up, can you? She said, no, I can't. He said, well, you can't get back all that you said about that woman either. It's blown everywhere. So he said, instead of that, go to the person and talk to them about it. They may not have even known they hurt you. They may not have thought about it, and it's all on your part. But the point is, before you tell everybody how awful this person is, you work on it with them. Now, I'm going to mention farther down, some things are hard to do like that. They take more time. But still, the point is, if it takes a while, don't tell everybody in the world, because then you can never go back and make it straight if the two of you get together. So Christ is very wise. Go and tell them. How about that? Now, all of us have been hurt. All of us have people we wish they would act different. They've hurt us. They've been unjust to us, unthinking. They stole our boyfriend or our girlfriend, and we live with, I remember the years. I remember how much it hurts in your heart, and you don't even have any appetite. I remember being 16 and someone taking my girlfriend from me. Things like that. We've all had these kind of hurt. They have lumps in our memories and pain when we think about it. And even today, they still hurt some of you. These past things that have happened. How do you forgive? You know how painful it is. I don't have to tell you. We've all experienced it. But what do you do so that you can process forgiving somebody? Now this is important. And some of this will be continued tonight, because there's a lot more to it than I can tell you in 20 minutes. But the first thing to do is remember that only God is an expert in forgiveness. You're an amateur. It's going to take a while. It's going to take some learning sometimes. The first thing is, do you want to forgive the person? Now, you see, hate can be a delicious taste. I hate him, I hate her, and I'm enjoying hating them after what they did to me. Okay? I see you shaking your head. You know the taste of hate. And then you can feel so righteous. I'm an innocent, virtuous person, and look what they did to me. You have to give that up. Oh my. Sometimes that's hard to give up. Hating a person, not wanting to forgive them. So the first thing you do is you finally come to God and you say, I've had enough of this misery of holding all this against that person. In fact, my hands are full holding them so they won't get away and they'll get treated right. That's the first thing. You have to say, I want to forgive. It's sort of like Christ asked the man by the pool, do you want to be healed? Sort of a strange thing, isn't it? Well, the man may have said, no, I don't. They deliver the paper to me every day. A church feeds me. They bring me new clothes when these wear out. I've been here 38 years. I'll have to think about that. I've got a good thing going. Because it was a strange question, but so the question is, do you really want to forgive them? Okay. The second thing is that you get new eyes from God as you walk with him in forgiveness. You can look, you know, when you hate a person and you don't forgive them, they become like a cartoon and they're the same all the time. And you can never think about anything good they've ever done. Everything is bad because they hurt you. So you have to get to where you start looking with new eyes and see that they are also people in need of forgiveness and mercy. That they do some good things. That they're not all just hurting you. That's in the past, see. And you start looking at more than their faults. That helps. It helps move towards it. And you have to reserve the right to get even. Because really, when you don't forgive somebody, that's what you're after. I'm gonna make this thing, I'm gonna get even. I'm gonna get them. Or the people around me will hate them enough that we'll get them. Because I've poisoned all them. So you surrender the right to get even. And it takes a lot of prayer and a lot of walking with God. This isn't easy. I'm not saying, when I was young, you used to say, oh, forgive and forget. No, that isn't that easy. And even when Christ said, go to the person, that may have taken many times trying to get that thing straight. See? It's not, snap your finger and it's all gone. And after you surrender that, and you're walking with God, a miracle comes, and you start wishing the person well. Oh, not that they'll be gotten, but that they'll be blessed. That they are frail people like you are, and if everybody around you knew what you've been doing and thinking, it'd get pretty tight, wouldn't it? Well, God knows that, and he forgave you. He knew every bit of it. He knows when you're praying and not really sincere about it. But he forgives you. And then I want you to know you have to accept some ambiguity. Life isn't all together all the time for all of us. There's always a string hanging out somewhere. You never understand another person completely. You don't understand yourself completely. Don't you say to yourself sometimes, self, why did I do that? You do, don't you? Well, some of you are honest anyway. I do that. Why in the world did I say that to them? How could I feel that towards them? So remember, this isn't like a Western movie where the good guys wear white hats and the bad guys wear black hats. This isn't like that. There was a workshop up near our assembly grounds in North Carolina for broken down pastors and religious workers. I'm serious. Because they have problems. We have problems too. And we had a youth minister that was thinking about suicide. He had had enough of the whole thing. And so we got him into this great place. There was a great theologian there, Carlisle Marney, and there was a great psychologist there. And the boy went there, the young man, and really found healing and made a good minister. But he said, I went back the next year, and we had a meeting with all of us that had been cured. And the psychologist got up and said, let me tell you something. You think you've got it all rolled up right and everything's perfect, there's always a string hanging out. You never understand yourself or others completely, do you? And by the grace of God, you don't need to live right. But we don't. We don't. I'm going to cover some of this tonight in a lot more depth than this. But we're going to be here an hour if I use all of it. And you may begin to dislike me and have to need forgiveness to forgive me for staying. You've heard about the speaker who tried to become immortal by being eternal. Well, see, that happens if you preach too long. So what I'm saying is because you don't understand yourself or them completely, take some time. When the body has trauma, bad trauma, heart surgery, something, it takes a long time to get well. If he just sews up a little place on my hand, it doesn't take long, does it? Well, sometimes you get hurt a little bit, that heals. Oh, but sometimes what happens to you is so deep, it takes longer for you to heal that way too, just like the body. So be patient with yourself. It takes a while to get to this. All right, let me give you some examples. Let me tell you something. This is funny. I like to share with you where I've been some. One of the professors of preaching said, have somebody, and you might do this to me, say it's all right. He said, have somebody in the congregation that you trust take a blank piece of paper and draw a line right down the middle of it and put concrete on this side and abstract on that side. And let them follow you. And he did this to my sermons. He said, if it's all abstract, all theology, all philosophy, all that, then you're going to bore them to death. Now, if you can put some stories in and some things, that's getting over to the other side. And your sermon ought to look like this. It has teaching, and then it has example. Teaching, example. Illustrations, however you want to call it. And the illustrations and the stories are the thing you carry, the buckets you carry the sermon home in. You'll remember them when you can't remember 15 minutes of straight theology. You really can. So I just thought I'd throw that in. So this is the other side of the page. Let me give you an example. I'll start with myself. I've told you this before, but you need to hear it because preacher-type people have this problem too. When I was about 12 years old, I went down to live with some cousins for a summer, and they were rebuilding their house. And the one that had married into the family, he told me that I was the dumbest person that ever lived. He may have been right at the time, I don't know. But a 12-year-old that hears that gets called a blockhead, that gets verbally beaten up, emotionally beaten up, boy, that stays with you a long time. And I used to think as a 12-year-old, one day I'm going to be big, and I'm going to be younger than he is, and I'm going to be stronger than he is, and I'm coming back and meet him. I did. I really did. And several things happened, but I lived with that a long time. What happened was I became a Christian in the meantime. You know, that changes some things that we're going to do. Anyway, when I got out of college, I was this tall, 6'2". I wasn't built like this. I didn't have any stomach then. And I had worked out with weights a good bit of the time while I was in college. And I weighed 215, and it was mostly muscle. And you know, I had done this thing here about looking at the person with different eyes. I realized the man was a fine Christian leader, had a good family, he was a great father, And I thought, you don't want to beat up somebody like that. And I don't know why he treated me like that. Maybe he felt inferior and there was somebody else he could hit on. There are a lot of reasons he might have done that. And you know, we became friends. We did. And when he died, I went to the funeral, and when they asked, is there anybody that would like to speak about him, I got up and said, this man meant a lot to me. He taught me how to play ping pong, how to make a ping pong table. He taught me how to fish and boat. He was good to me, too. I didn't say the two in the funeral. But I felt that way. But boy, it took a while. It really did. And you know, sometimes, I don't know if I ought to say this or not, but when you become a Christian, you get disappointed because things like that you can't do. And I had to work with that just a little bit. So I've had that experience. And this stuff is true. If you want to read the best book on forgiveness, get Lewis Smedes, S-M-E-D-E-S, and it's called Forgive and Forget. Some of this is out of that. Some of this is out of my own reading and experience. All right, let me give you the second example. A 17-year-old boy was on his moped, and a driver ran over him and didn't stop, and the boy was dead at the scene. And the mother felt like most of us would if their 17-year-old son had been run over and killed, and the person left. She kept a diary of her talk with God. And they started off, God, I am mad at him. I hope he can't sleep without dreaming about killing my son. She was honest. Any of you been that honest with God? It helps your life an awful lot. And that's the way she wrote in that diary. I hope he suffers. I lost my son. And then she got to where she could say, I don't think I can ever forgive him. I don't think I can ever, and it went through the diary. And finally, by the grace of God and her taking the time, she said, I have finally gotten to the place where I can forgive the man who killed my son. Because after all, didn't God forgive all of those who had killed his son? Okay, you're with me now. That's it. There was this man that killed him, by the way, was on drugs. Probably never saw him. The third one is a drunk driver killed a lady's son, also a teenager. And she was on the radio talking to a Christian psychologist and said, how can I ever forgive him? I don't have it in my heart. And another lady called in and said, I had the same thing happen to my son, and I decided that bitterness would not control my life for the rest of my life. I was not going to live a bitter person. And of course, she started her prayer life and all. And she said, and then I also started Mothers Against Drunk Driving, a chapter in our area. I decided I was going to do something about it. It takes work, it takes time, it takes patience with yourself. And you have to remember the love and grace and forgiveness of God, who's received you warts and all and loves you deeply. You see, we love because he first loved us, and we forgive because he first forgave us. That's the flow of it. That's what happens. Jesus even said to love your enemies, which is another sermon. Live close to God. Do your prayer journal if you're having trouble. It helps you to see what you think. You know, I studied with one psychologist who used the method of repeating what people say. And they'd come in and say, my mother did this and my mother did that, and I don't know how I can stand it. He said, you hate your mother, don't you? Well, they had never heard anybody say that. And it started changing their life. It sounds foolish at first, but when you hear somebody repeat what you feel, you get a new look at yourself. And healing comes out of that. Now, the title of the service was The Purpose of Forgiveness. I really haven't gotten to that yet, have I? But I'm just about to end with it. The purpose of forgiveness is to free both of you. The one that can't forgive and the one that caused the harm. You see, one of the words for forgiveness in the New Testament is to let go. And you're holding on to another person. You're not going to let anybody forget what he or she did to you. You put it in God's hand. They may never be reconciled, but you are to yourself and to your God when you finally can forgive. It's a very deep thing. I want you to notice also, it's important to the church. They said, go to him. If it doesn't work, take some others. If that doesn't work, bring it to the church. Why? Why bring it to the church? Because the church is getting hurt on this too. When people who go to church have an attitude of unforgiveness and hate against other people, it doesn't help the church they're in. It was important enough you bring it to the church and get the thing straight, because we're hurting too. Last point, last thought. Maybe, just maybe, you're having trouble really forgiving a person because you haven't experienced the depth of your forgiveness from God. My master's degree was on Reinhold Niebuhr. He was known as the theologian of sin, not sinning, but writing about sin. And they asked him one time, why do you write so much about sin? And by the way, he gave the lectures in London, and they said, in the London Times headline said, the doctrine of man's sinfulness has been established by Reinhold Niebuhr. It's a doctrine you can see in history. It's true. But they said, why is that such a big thing? He said, because until a person understands the depth of their sin, that it's really serious and they've really sinned and they're really away from God, they won't know the depth of grace that lifts them out of it. And maybe you haven't lived close enough to grace and God's forgiveness to be able to forgive another. Search yourself today. See where you are. See what God can do with you when you forgive and your hands are free to do something else. Let's pray. Lord, this is such a hard subject. We all have problems with it. Some are easy, of course, and some are very difficult to forgive. Help us to grow that way. Help us become that way. And Lord, for those who have not experienced your grace, may they choose your forgiveness this day and find peace as your children. We pray through Christ. Amen. This is the time for you to decide. If Christ isn't your Lord, if you've never trusted him, I'd like for you to start today. This is a good time. It's a good time to follow him and find what you can be with God's help. Find what you can become because of him. And maybe even forgiveness will start getting a bit easier, knowing the forgiveness of God. There's some here that need a church home, probably. And this is a loving church. And I've enjoyed being here. My wife has. We love you people. We appreciate you people. And there are some here, I hope you'll find this truly the family of God, where you can come and know him and his redemption and grow in that faith with others. So as we stand and sing our hymn of invitation, I invite you to come. I'll be down front and I will, with joy, meet you when you come. If God has spoken to you this day, you come.